My sister brought up that my affluent Dr. Fiancé and their child have effectively held him hostage for several years. Now, she's earnestly requesting my assistance to salvage his professional standing after he disastrously mishandled a surgery. She's even proposed offering something in return for my help. Let me delve into this situation. It's all about my sister, Carol. However, I'll refer to her by her actual name because, honestly, it's the most straightforward way to express this. Carol managed to entice my fiancé into her allure because she believed he was too handsome and wealthy for a woman she considered plain. She thought he deserved someone stunning, so she presented herself to him, and that foolish man ended up marrying her. Well, congratulations to them, because I managed to rid myself of a deceitful partner and found someone who truly deserves me. Please bear with me, as this is a detailed story that dates back 15 years when I was in my mid-20s. Now, at 41, Carol is 6 years younger than me and has a completely different personality. She's the kind of person who garners the most attention at family gatherings and social events, a trait she's cultivated since our childhood. She was always more interested in dressing up and socializing with friends, undoubtedly because she's quite beautiful in the drop-dead gorgeous sense, and she takes pride in that. Carol never missed a chance to showcase her superficial beauty and look down on those who didn't meet her beauty standards, like me. She was always critical of my fashion choices and mocked my less social demeanor. As a child, I leaned more towards academics, often seeing with my books and comics rather than playing with Barbies. In fact, I didn't even own a Barbie doll, unlike Carol. We never shared a close sisterly bond. She saw herself as a fashionista while I was considered the plain-looking sister. That's how she labeled me, plain. And to some extent, she was correct. I'm a simple woman with no flair or drama, uninterested in seeking attention. I'm calm, composed, and prefer to be in my own space. Early on, I decided to leave home during high school, feeling immense relief. Who would want to stay around someone so entitled? Life was pretty enjoyable with my busy schedule in medical school. I used to visit home during holidays or spring break, but kept my trips short. Over time, the tension between Carol and me lessened since our interactions were minimal. Carol had dropped out of high school to pursue a career in fashion and later left fashion school to become a model. When I last spoke with her, she had secured 2 photo shoot projects for a local clothing brand over 5 years. I'm not sure if one would call that a successful modeling career, despite her frequent references to it. Now, if you think I'm being mean, hold on. After moving out, the bitterness between Carol and me faded. We met twice a year for a few days, which wasn't enough time for her to annoy me, so we were on good terms. During my freshman year in college, I met Smith, who was quite senior to me. He was pursuing his master's degree while I was in my first year of a bachelor's program. Additionally, he had a couple of years of hands-on experience working as a duty doctor, specializing in cardiology, one of the most prestigious specialties, adding an extra layer to his impressive profile. He was also handsome and conducted lectures on the circulatory system for freshman students to earn extra income and keep his knowledge sharp. His straightforward teaching methods made him popular, especially among the female students, because who wouldn't want to learn from a blue-eyed, 6'2", lean, and well-built university senior? I also took his classes, and eventually, we began dating. In my final year of college, he proposed to me after 4 years of dating, and I had no reason to decline since he was already employed at a hospital. During the holidays, when I visited home, my mother noticed the ring on my finger and, amidst the joyous moments of the festivities, I shared the news with her. She was thrilled because it was unusual for me to get serious with someone. Smith was the first man I had ever dated or been intimate with, so my mother inquired about the details of our relationship. Carol often used to comment that I would never find a good man to marry, believing that only rich and handsome men were suitable. Whenever she found out I was seeing someone, she would remark that he was likely to run away and that our relationship wouldn't even last a week. So, when Carol learned about Smith, her interest peaked, which was unusual for her because she typically found my life very dull. I asked her why she wanted to know about him, and she replied that since he was going to be part of the family, I should get to know him. My mother requested that I invite him for dinner on New Year's Eve, and later I discovered that Carol had actually asked my mother to extend the invitation to Smith. Since we didn't have any plans for that year, Smith agreed to join us. When we arrived home, Carol greeted us warmly, which was surprising because she's usually a party person who never stays home on weekends or New Year's Eve, as she typically spends that time partying with friends for a week straight. But this time, she was at home, which should have been a cause for concern, but I wasn't bothered by it. I don't care about others' lives. I went home with Smith, and my sister was visibly impressed by him. Her first comment was, "I thought you were rich, but you're handsome too." Her flirtatious behavior was blatant right in front of me, yet I didn't pay it any attention because I was confident in my relationship. Throughout the evening, she made advances toward him by offering compliments, touching his arms and thighs unnecessarily, and forcing conversations. She even sat next to him at the dinner table. I gave her a glance, and she made a cute pout, saying that since I get to sit with him every day, today she could be his arm candy. Everyone laughed, and we took it as harmless fun. During the conversation, she learned that Smith usually takes a walk after dinner, so once he was done cleaning up, she offered to show him around the neighborhood. Smith looked at me while I remained expressionless, not knowing how to react. Smith awkwardly agreed, and the two of them went out for a walk that night. While we were driving back from my parents' house, Smith asked if I had noticed how Carol was flirting with him. I laughed it off, saying that she's just an attention seeker, believing that Smith wasn't shallow enough to fall for superficial beauty. But, unfortunately, he was equally captivated by Carol's charm and betrayed me at the first chance he got. A few months later, during my final year exams, I cut down on our outings to focus on my studies. Eventually, I noticed him reducing communication with me. When I confronted him, he said he wanted me to concentrate on my finals and that I was too busy for any suspicions. On the last day of my exam, I asked him to pick me up from college, but he said he was busy. That night, I called him to check on him, and he said he was home but was too tired and ready to sleep. I went to his place to surprise him, but his place was locked. I called him again, but he didn't answer. I waited for his call the next day, but he didn't get back to me shamelessly. I called him again, questioning why he lied the previous night. He said he forgot to mention that he had crashed at his colleague's place. Foolishly, I hadn't picked up on this as a red flag. This was the first time anything like this had happened to me, so I didn't suspect foul play. This continued for a week until I regained my composure. I directly asked him if he wanted to break up with me. He hesitated for a few seconds before quietly saying yes. He admitted that he no longer loved me, and that was the end of our conversations. I didn't ask about the when or how, because heartbreak is always painful, especially without any clear reason. Additionally, he left me feeling insecure, doubting myself, and with many unanswered questions that neither of us addressed. It took months and many bottles of single malt whiskey, but eventually, I moved on. I was glad he broke up with me after my finals because otherwise, I might have taken another year to finish medical school. 7 months later, I received a call from Carol inviting me to her engagement. I congratulated her and inquired about her fiancé, but she didn't mention his name. She simply asked me to attend the party and meet him in person. I was happy for her, although it saddened me that I was supposed to be married around that time, but due to my breakup, I was single. Determined to forget my miserable past, I decided to attend my sister's engagement party. As soon as he entered the venue, I saw the banner that read, Carol and Smith, which sent chills down my spine. I tried to reassure myself, thinking that Smith is a common name and it might be someone else. But as I walked inside, I encountered 2 of Smith's friends who turned away upon seeing me approach. My heartbeat quickened as I neared the podium where Carol was supposed to be sitting with her fiancé. The moment I saw Smith with Carol, his arms wrapped around hers, I froze in place. I didn't know what to do, I just stood there with tears in my eyes. The next thing I remember is my mother pulling me aside, urging me to remain calm and not create a scene, so that everyone could be happy. She said that no one knew about our past, and she wanted it to stay that way. I began to cry out loud and shouted, "You knew everything and yet you let this happen. Carol is a expletive. You all are evil. You're all in this together." At that moment, I saw Carol approaching with a malicious smile, a sight that took me back 15 years ago. I remember every word she said so clearly, making it the most humiliating moment of my life. She said, "You thought you could have this man," pointing to Smith, "handsome, tall, rich, and that you're so plain. No way. You don't deserve him, you deserve someone plain like you. Do you see how beautiful we look together and how everyone is adoring us? Oh my God, what a cute couple. Everyone would love to see you next to him." I wanted to slap her right across the face, but my mother stopped me, urging me to leave. She thought I was there to disrupt the engagement and yelled at me, "Why did you come here? Don't you have any self-respect?" I replied, I didn't know that this expletive was screwing him. Had I known, I would have never shown my face. Carol denied inviting me, lying to my mother by saying she hadn't extended the invitation. My mother had asked Carol not to invite me because it would hurt me, but Carol deliberately invited me to humiliate me. I left the place crying and yelling, with the pain from my breakup resurfacing. It would be an understatement to describe it as difficult. It was the most traumatic phase of my life, the lowest point I could recall. Fortunately, I graduated with good grades and secured a position at a reputable hospital with demanding duty hours, leaving me with little time to dwell on anything. I intentionally kept myself busy on my days off and managed to move on. Years later, I met my husband at work. He's a board member of the hospital chain. We dated for 4 years, got married, and are now proud parents of 2 children. Fast forward to a week ago, I received a call from an unknown number. I answered, and the person on the other end identified herself as Carol. Even upon hearing her name, it took me a few seconds to realize she was my sister, as some of my patients are also named Carol. I asked her why she was calling. She was acting so sweet, inquiring about my life and everything. But I know the Carol I have wouldn't spare a second on me without any ulterior motive. I told her to stop the nonsense and to tell me what she wanted. She remained silent for a moment before saying, "Actually, I need help. My husband, Smith, has gotten into trouble. A patient had a post-surgery allergic reaction, and the hospital might terminate him." I was taken aback and asked what I could possibly do. She explained that Smith worked at one of the hospital chains where my husband is a board member, implying that my husband could help save Smith from severe punishment. By then, I had zoned out, frustrated, and snapped at her, telling her never to call me again and that we wouldn't help them. I didn't know that Smith was working for the same hospital chain as me. He was at a different location. I looked him up on the employee portal of the hospital and saw that his current status was suspended. I wanted to discuss this with my husband, but I didn't want to dredge up my painful past, so I decided to let it go. 2 days ago, my mother showed up at my door looking like she had seen a ghost. I had cut off all contact with her since Carol's engagement day. She embraced me and cried, saying how good it was to see me after so many years, but I knew her underlying motive behind her sweetness was to save Smith's reputation. My husband was home at the time, and he heard my mother's plea to help her golden son-in-law. He explained that Smith was accused of medical negligence and there was an ongoing investigation against him. He said there was nothing he could do, and even if he could, he wouldn't, as he doesn't use his power for personal gain. My mother bit her lip and left without saying a word. Yesterday, my husband returned from work and informed me that Smith's investigation had been concluded and he would be fired from his job. However, my husband has the authority to allow Smith to keep his medical license, albeit with a hefty penalty, by persuading the other board members not to forward his case to the state healthcare authorities for further investigation. Now, I'm in a dilemma. Should I forget the humiliation and help Smith, or should I hold him accountable for his actions? As a doctor, I understand how challenging it is to earn a medical degree, and losing one's license is one of the worst consequences a doctor can face. Update 1 ***. There was no need to post this here and seek your opinions. What Carol and my mother have done clearly shows they don't deserve any help. They are nothing but narcissists. Carol and my mother have been hurling insults at me on social media. I don't use Facebook much, but this week when I logged in, I found I had been tagged in several posts by Carol, where she called me a vindictive expletive for framing her husband. She wrote a lengthy post accusing me of being jealous that Smith had dumped me and married her, claiming I was doing all this to avenge her betrayal. My mother also joined in, stating that I had abused them and cut them off because I couldn't tolerate Smith marrying Carol. Our extended family took their side and commented that I had taken revenge too far by ruining Smith's livelihood. Even Smith himself commented that I was delusional and that he never loved me or ever proposed to me. He had always loved Carol. I was stunned by his comment, so I immediately untagged myself and blocked them. I told my husband not to spare Smith from any of the charges. In fact, I wanted him to be punished to the fullest extent for each of his offenses. My husband gave me a smirking look and said he had never seen me so angry. Consequently, Smith was officially fired from the hospital, and his case was forwarded to the state healthcare department for license cancellation. A fresh investigation would be conducted by the government body, and if he is found guilty of the charges the hospital is alleging, he would lose his license and potentially face prison time, which I consider an additional form of justice. We will update this situation as it progresses. Currently, I'm enjoying the drama with a basket of popcorn. Yum yum. Edit ***. Small clarification, Carol and my mother were not added to my social media accounts. The thing is, I have an open account, so anyone could tag me in their posts. I hadn't blocked them earlier because 15 years ago, I wasn't using social media. Now, I have blocked them from social media and also updated my life. How low can a person stoop? Now I know. Smith showed up at my workplace. He worked for the same hospital chain as me, but at a different location. He posed as a patient and came into my office. He knew there was no way I would have encountered him otherwise, so I immediately asked him to leave. He said he had paid a fee to consult me, so as a doctor, I should treat him professionally. I listened to his problems while quickly turning on the voice recorder on my phone to ensure he couldn't trap me in another mess, and I'm glad I did. He was faking a health condition, claiming he had the flu, and I acted professionally, giving him medication according to his symptoms. However, he wasn't ready to leave and kept asking foolish questions, flirting with me unnecessarily. I asked him to stop and leave, but he insisted, saying he wanted to apologize for hurting me and claimed that your sister had trapped him and forced him to sleep with her. He said she had blackmailed him into marrying her, threatening to press molestation charges otherwise. I told him to stop because all he was saying was complete nonsense. I could have called security on him, but I found his desperation amusing and decided to hear him out with a satisfied smile. He went on to say that he knew I still loved him, which was why I was still hurt and wanted revenge. He admitted that he still had feelings for me and regretted marrying Carol, promising that if I could convince my husband to save him from prison time, he would leave Carol and become my lover. He said I didn't need to leave my husband, but we could have a secret relationship. That audacious man had the nerve to say such things, so I burst out laughing, called security on him, and told them to remove him. He had no idea he was being recorded. The disappointment on his face was satisfying, as he thought he had convinced me. LOL. I then texted Carol, wanting to send her the recordings of her dishonorable husband. I wrote, "Your loser husband visited my clinic posing as a patient," and she responded, "I know, he tells me everything." She also mentioned that she knew I still loved him and offered to let him sleep with me for a night if I could save his license and prison time. Her response shocked me. There was no point in talking to her any further. They were both part of this deceitful scheme. I informed my husband about this, and he was horrified. He suggested that we could sue them for offering bribes, but it would bring up my painful past. I replied that he should handle one charge at a time while I did my part to seek revenge. I then added Carol, Smith, my mother, and other relatives on Facebook. Carol and Smith accepted my friend request immediately, perhaps taking it as a positive sign. Then, I wrote a lengthy post detailing how Carol, Smith, and my mother had been trying to manipulate me into helping Smith avoid prison time. I attached screenshots of my conversations with Carol and also turned the voice recordings into a video with pictures of Smith and Carol playing in the background, uploading the post. It blew up with comments, so I blocked Carol, Smith, and my mother because I knew they would retaliate. My extended family and relatives expressed their disgust at Carol's offer to let Smith hook up with me to get away with his negligence. Carol and my mother tried to contact me, but I had blocked their calls and voicemails. I spent all of yesterday and today reading the comments on my post, where people went to extreme lengths to troll Carol and Smith. My weekend couldn't have been better. Now, on to the next story Story 2, discovering my wife's year-long affair when our child's bus driver accidentally revealed their secret At the time of this incident, my wife and I had been together for 10 years and were parents to 2 sons under the age of 6. My wife was very close to her aging mother and made sure to include her in our family life. Even though she lived in a retirement home, once a week we'd visit her and bring a collection of our sons' toys for them to enjoy. Soon after, my wife encouraged our boys to make gifts for their teachers and bus driver with Grandma's help. Simultaneously, she started taking her mother out sightseeing and spending one-on-one time together. The routine was that she'd get the kids off the bus and then begin getting ready to go out. Over time, she began seeing her mother twice a week by herself and every other Sunday with all of us. This seemed like a lot, but even so, her mother would always express how much she missed us. I wondered how that could be if she was taking her out all the time, but I dismissed the thought. One day, my wife got the kids off the bus and came back inside, cheerful as ever. She skipped upstairs to get ready for another outing with her mom. My boy asked to watch a show, so I grabbed my wife's phone off the charger and noticed several missed calls from my son's bus driver. They were both home safe and sound, so I couldn't imagine why there would be so many missed calls from him. I tried to call him back but found that my wife had changed the lock on her phone. Instinct took over, and I downloaded an app on my phone to disguise my number as my wife's. I set the call to record before dialing his number. As soon as he answered, he said, "Hi love, are you ready for the special date I promised you?" I hung up immediately upon hearing this. I went upstairs to find my wife as she got ready, looking ravishing. Clearly, she was going on a special date. As soon as she saw me, she started downplaying how nice she looked, explaining that her mom wanted her to take pride in her appearance no matter the occasion. I played the recording of the bus driver's voice, causing her perfume bottle to fall from her hand and shatter on the floor. She immediately became desperate, begging me to hold on a minute and listen to her, but I still grabbed the car keys and, with the boys, insisted that she come get her and never bring her back. She was too panicked to cry, just hyperventilating and saying she would have nowhere to stay because her home was with me and the boys. I refused to give in to her pleas. I called the bus driver again, this time on speakerphone. He answered in a weary tone. I told him I knew what was going on and that he needed to come pick up my wife because she belonged to him now. He quickly told me to slow down, explaining that he was married and didn't want to get involved in any drama. My wife's face fell when she realized how bad her situation was. I just shrugged and hung up. While my wife started redialing his number in vain, just before I left, I heard her leave a voicemail telling him he needed to come pick her up and get her a place to stay because it was all his fault. She continued calling him late into the night until she found his wife on social media and publicly begged her to tell him to call her because she needed to speak with him urgently. This obviously raised suspicions that led to discovering the truth. My wife had been dating and sleeping with her children's bus driver for an entire year. I had no idea this was going on at all, let alone for so long. I felt like an idiot for not noticing my wife's whereabouts sooner, but I truly believe she was spending time with her mother. She was, but only very rarely. My wife had slandered my wife's name through the school and all over town. The bus driver was so ashamed and willing to do whatever it took to gain his wife's forgiveness that he ghosted my wife and even stopped using social media. He tried in vain to prove his loyalty to his wife and hoped things could return to normal, but they never did for any of us. My wife was mortally embarrassed that her lover had abandoned her at the first sign of trouble and that in her attempts to get his help, she had torn his family apart and worsened her own situation. I also distanced myself from her until a visitation schedule was arranged and I was awarded primary custody. Her desperate affair cost her reputation, self-confidence, and her family. She isn't the same as she was, and I doubt she'll ever be. I'm thankful I'm not the one who has to figure out how to live without my kids because of some stupid mistake that shouldn't have happened. The bus driver even apologized to me, explaining that when he started seeing my wife, he was in a bad place in his own marriage. He justified seeing my wife by deciding he only needed emotional support, which turned into physical intimacy, and before he knew it, they were living a double life and were caught red-handed.